All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Monday, March 16th, 2015 City Council meeting. At this time, I will call the meeting to order, and we will do the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So Shelley, you want to do a roll call for us?
Absolutely, I would. Albertson?
Here.
Bueller? Bueller. Danforth? Mandy? Somewhere. Meisenheimer? Riefenberger?
Here.
Solom?
Here.
Tupper?
Here.
Wilkins? Thank you. If you just want to announce when Beth does come here so that we can note.
I will. At this time, I will look for a motion and a second for discussion on approval of the consent agenda. Motion by Bruce, second by Mike. Is there any questions on that? Hearing none, I will look for council approval. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Number 2, approval of the agenda. I need a motion and a second for
So
discussion. Motion by Randy, second by Bruce. Any questions on the agenda? Hearing none, I will look for council action. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. At this time, I would like to turn this over to Shelley for introduction of a new person in our family.
And I just to let the record show that Miss Manty is here and accounted for.
I was visiting with our new HR person.
Yeah, Christy, if you want to come on up and sit in the hot seat. Just to take a moment for the new Human Resources Coordinator Risk Manager. Christy Johnson has accepted that position, and she has successfully completed her first day today. And so I'll say lots of prayers that she will come back tomorrow.
I will be here.
And I just kind of wanted, for both her sake and your sake, to be able to put some names and faces together. I know as a native of Watertown, she probably recognizes a lot of you, but I just kind of wanted everybody to meet her. So, Christy, if you want to say anything or if you want to add anything about yourself, you can sure go ahead.
Well, I am a native of Watertown. I graduated from Watertown High School. My maiden name is Cummings, and so if that means anything to anybody. And worked for 30 years to try to get back home. So I'm very happy to be here. I graduated from Drake University in Des Moines, both for undergrad and law. I practiced corporate law in Des Moines for a long time with an area of emphasis in employment law, and then ended up taking over an HR department for a large insurance company in Des Moines. So I'm happy to be back in HR and very happy to be serving in the capacity to serve the town of Watertown.
And we did find out that you are a classmate of Don's. Is that correct?
Yes, from kindergarten on.
Yeah, we're hoping for
I'm
stories.
not sharing. Yes.
Welcome back to Watertown and welcome aboard. So.
Yes.
Well,
Thank you very much. We
Thank
appreciate you being here. I sure appreciate you being here.
Thank you. And if any, of course, if any of you ever need anything or have a question, please feel free to call.
Thanks, Christy. Okay, moving on. Number 3, application for a new retail on-off sale malt beverage, a new retail on-off sale wine license to Reeve LLC, doing business as Watertown Brewing Company at 113 East Kemp Avenue. At this time, I will open the public hearing if there's anyone here that wants to speak in favor of or against this. I will close the public hearing, and I will look for a motion and a second for discussion purposes.
Second.
Motion by John, second by Beth. Is there any questions on this?
Just which old building is 113? Ponds, that's what I thought.
So is this, when it says brewing company, are they actually producing a product or just?
Yep.
They are.
They will be producing a beer,
It's a
is what they're
microbrewery.
looking at, yeah. They've got huge plans for over there. They've got, I think in the summertime, I understand they're gonna be up on the rooftop, serving lunches and dinners and such, and of course the microbrewery downstairs. It's gonna be a very interesting little place up there. They found in the walls, when they're tearing things down out of that building, it's quite old, the insulation was really dirt that they put in the walls for insulation, so it kinda gives you an idea how old that building is. Yeah, older than me, that's right. So is there any questions on this? It's gonna be a fun little addition for Watertown. Okay, so at this time, I'll look for council action. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Number 4, ordinance number 1507, regulating the sale and advertisement of goods in parks within and for the city of Watertown. At this time, I will open the public hearing if there's anybody that wants to speak in, pardon? Oh, I'm sorry, I read public hearing, it's the second reading. New glasses. This is the second reading. So I will look for a motion and a second for discussion purposes. Motion by Mike, second by Bruce. Okay, is there any, Stanton, you want to indulge us on this a little bit?
I think as Jay mentioned at first reading, the Park and Rec Board recommended this ordinance be approved. So not that they're going to prohibit the sale or advertising within parks, they just want to be able to know where it is and be able to say yes or no at a given time at a given location.
Is this limited to parks, what truly are known as parks, or is it all their properties?
If you look, it says within any park or other ground under the control of the Park Recreation and Forestry Board.
So it's all their facilities and parks and
Correct.
whatever?
Yep. Whatever they've got control over, yep.
Okay.
Stan, is there a license for this fee? Is there a peddler's fee we have to pay to do this, I guess?
There is a license that the finance office issues to peddlers and transient merchants, and depending on what activity will determine the price.
Nothing new, though. That would just be an established license. This is just that they get to look at it and know what's going on.
Correct.
Yeah, I really like this because it helps them make sure that whatever's going on in terms of transient merchant or peddling or whatever is appropriate for the activity that's going on in that particular park or in that particular property. And so I think I really support this because it makes sure we don't have some inappropriate sales going on at a children's function. So I really think it's a good move.
Stanton, I have a question for you. It just kind of came to me here. Now, what if somebody like a Cherry Berry or an Orange Leaf or something like that wanted to go out to the Ball Diamonds out of Cook Field and they parked on the county side? Can we stop them?
If they're not on ground controlled by Park and Rec, I would say no.
Would this be, I wonder, this might be an issue that we could discuss at a joint jurisdiction meeting too, if we thought it was the right thing to do. I think that's probably a good idea.
One other question I have, Stanton, on that, or for anybody on this, is I know through softball and baseball, I can't really speak for hockey, but there have been events that they've hosted where they brought on other businesses into those. For example, a baseball tournament or softball tournament where they bring somebody in that is selling maybe sporting goods on site. So prior to any of that happening, they would have to go and get this application done, correct? Or is that not correct?
Either that or the entity that's sponsoring it would say that they want Park Board approval because in conjunction with this event, they're going to be having things available for purchase.
Okay, because they're going to need to know that, because today they would never think of doing that. They'd just
Yep.
get it set up and go run with it. So
you're gonna have-
we're going to have to let those associations know that they are going to have to come to this.
I believe Jay's started having those conversations already.
Perfect. Any other questions for Stanton on this? Hearing none, I will look for council action. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Number 5, second reading of public second reading of ordinance number 1505, amending zoning district boundaries by rezoning 12 lots in KAK's addition from R1 Single Family Residential District to R2 Single Family Attached Residential District. I will open a public hearing at this time if there's anybody who wants to speak in favor of or against this. Hearing none, I will close the public hearing. I will look for a motion and a second for discussion. Motion by Dan, second by Beth. Okay, Sarah, if you want to light
Sure.
this up, you're sure welcome to do it.
CAC's addition is adjacent to Lake Pelican, and I've got it on the screen here. It's south of Highway 212, and currently the lots that have developed in CAC's addition are the ones that are zoned R2 already or R3. And right now, the lots adjacent to the lake and across the street from those lots are zoned R1, and the owner wants to rezone not the lakefront lots, but the ones that are adjacent to the interior wetland, so that it makes a complete R2 loop around the wetland. And we don't see any issues with that. The lots will all be compliant. It's just very slightly different size requirements, and duplexes can go on there, and so it's a little more permissive of a zone.
Thank you, Sarah. Is there any questions that you have for her at this time? Hearing none, I will look for council action. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Number 6, second reading of ordinance number 1506, amending the zoning district boundaries by rezoning property adjacent to 4th Avenue Southwest from I-2 Heavy Industrial District to I-1 Light Industrial District. At this time, I will open the public hearing if there's anyone that wants to speak in favor of or against this. Hearing none, I will close the public hearing. I'll look for a motion and a second for discussion.
So moved.
Motion by Randy, second by Bruce. Any questions? Sarah, you might be able to go through this and just explain a little bit.
Sure. The property is adjacent to 4th Avenue South, and it's currently zoned I-2. As you can see on the map, the dark purple is I-2. It's also adjacent to I-1, which is light purple. So there's not going to be a creation of a pocket or anything. All of the owners of these lots are okay with this rezone, and so it would, the I-2 zone has greater setbacks, that putting it to an I-1 does limit the uses that you can put on there, but it also gives you more space to move around. You don't have the large setbacks. So, you have any
What-
questions?
Sarah, what's actually driving this? I mean, evidently somebody wants to do something with a piece of the property.
Right,
There's
the-
Kenny coming up here, so.
Yeah. I'll let Ken talk about it.
Yeah. Actually, we had a landowner that came in,
State your name, address. phone
and he wanted
number.
to build a building here, and he wanted to build it to the setbacks for the I-1 zone, which are 50-foot frontage versus 75-foot frontage. And instead of taking him through the variance process, I actually suggested maybe we rezone it to I-1, so we do it. And as long as you, and if you all remember, this was the old cement plant back in the day, and that's why it was heavy. And I-2 zoning allows for dust and noise and a lot of other things, and now a lot of residential's grown up along there, so we've talked to all these people and say, hey, would you like to rezone this to I-1? Because you got all the same uses, you just can't do any of the heavy industrial stuff, boundaries and stuff. They all agreed, so we pushed forward to do it. Now we'll be able to go in there without a variance, and it'll be a friendlier neighborhood there for what can go in there for the residential area, so.
Any other questions that we have for Kenny or Sarah on this? Hearing none, I'll look for council action. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thanks, Ken. Thanks, Sarah. Kenny, you're up again, I believe. Number 7, we're going to let you talk about this a little bit, and this time state your name. Not everybody in town knows you.
Most of them do.
This is number 7, first reading of ordinance number 1508, amending section 216001 and section .6501 of the revised ordinance of the city of Watertown. And Kenny, normally we don't have a lot of discussion on first readings, but I think it'd be good if you would just mention a little bit.
Right. Ken Buholt, city building official. Yeah, this is actually come about from a long process. A lot of people have been involved, and we've been playing with this for quite some time. And when people need to know right away is this does not affect anything that you drive daily. You know, your daily driving car, this has nothing to do with this. What we're trying to do is limit properties so they don't turn into parking lots with a lot of other things. And in a nutshell, it's going to limit 3 things that you can be able to park on your property, and this basically just limits the place and the time that it can be there. So you can typically have one pile of junk as long as it's under a tarp and covered up and stuff, but it allows you to put your boats and your campers and your trailers and your four-wheelers and all that stuff. Some can be parked in the driveway, some can be parked alongside the house, some can be parked in the rear yard. Depending on the part of the town that you're in, whether you got an alley or don't have an alley, those are all the variables that are in there. We can't cover every possible scenario there, so a lot of this is gonna probably fall back on me to the intent of what we wanted to try to accomplish, and we'll work through it that way.
And I will say that Kenny and your team have spent an enormous amount of time on this, and I think you've come to a pretty good conclusion.
I think at least we got a good starting point. It might grow through the years, but
Any questions that you have for Kenny? Well,
No.
it is first reading, but you might as well. you can
Fire away.
I
certainly
just
ask
got
him
one,
now.
one item of cleanup or whatever on A2. There's, I think the word storage is supposed to be stored. If you just want to clean that up. On the A2,
A2.
under 4, allowable use, A2. It says be parked or storage in the side. Should be parked or stored. Is that supposed to be stored like the one above, or?
Yep, that's fine.
Yeah, it's just nothing real important, but I just was reading that and thought we could fix that.
Got it, thank you.
Yeah. The only comment I'd have on this is how we've written this and presented this in our agenda. If the community reads this, they aren't gonna have any clue what this is. They are aware that this has been worked on for a long time, and I think we need to have some verbiage in here that specifically identified it as something to do with the parking along those lines, because that's what we were talking about, is the storage and parking. So we want
I thought we did accomplish that at the last meeting, separating storage from parking.
on the agenda.
Oh, on the agenda?
On the agenda,
Yeah, on the
specific.
agenda.
I'm sorry.
It doesn't
Okay.
state anything on here, it just says in accordance to,
Yep.
so that I think it needs to bring it out. We want everybody to have the opportunity to come and express their thoughts, concerns, ask questions, whatever it is. And I think if we list it as such on the next agenda, you're likely that you're not gonna have that. So we just need to change that so it's more understood by the public,
And, you
please.
know, I was thinking also, Mike, I don't know your opinion on this, but maybe we don't want to put it on the next agenda as the second reading. Maybe you want to put it on the agenda just as
A discussion item
a
again.
little more discussion before we nail it with the second reading. You guys okay with that?
Yeah,
All right, I think that's what we should
maybe
do.
have a chance for some more input, you bet.
In case somebody comes in and says, well, I didn't hear about this, well, we'll go another 2 weeks, and that'd be what, the first meeting in April?
And,
I
and
think that's a good idea, because I do think we've got to do something before we get into the season, and by May 1st, we're in it. If we're going to do something, we should do it before we get to the season, rather than say June 1st, let's just do it.
Because we did have dates in there, didn't we?
Yeah.
and they can be changed. When we send that, when we do the agenda, we say first reading on ordinance, and we state the title. And if you want that to be more explicit, you might want to change the ordinance title to say changing section, and then say what it's changing. So that people know what it's doing.
You bet.
Nice short answer. You gotta like that. Okay, well, thanks, Kenny, I appreciate it. And then we'll have that on the agenda, the first week in April, and we'll have some more discussion on it before we actually turn it in.
Let's try to get that out to the public as good as we can, because I think we need to try to get as much.
Yeah, any
Yeah.
input we can get on this would be very helpful. Okay, Let's move on. Number 8, first reading of ordinance number 1509, amending section 12.1001 of the revised ordinance of the city of Watertown. Again, this is first reading, but Lee, if you want to come up and kind of give us a little insight on this?
Sure, this is just some follow-up to the last time I appeared before you where we talked about officers doing security off-duty. It was a consensus of the council, and we've been acting that way ever since, that we're not doing any off-duty security in uniform being paid by another entity. The last time we discussed this, we talked about how to handle some of those situations, and we talked about contracting with the city for some of those, so we can still take a look at those as they come up and contract with the city. And I think a couple that come to mind would be a street dance or a concert, like at the out at the casino or somewhere like that. So those types of activities I think should be contracted through the city, as well as continue on with the dances that the schools have, the basketball games, those type of things, because there's a good relationship there with the school, and it works really well contracting through them to do those kinds of things. So the other thing we're looking at doing is how can we handle some of those other details. And as you know, there is a ordinance regulating security duty in and for the city of Watertown. And there's a sentence in there that I think if we could add that would help us cover some of those, because the way the ordinance is written, it looks like, we have to do a background check, clear them for that type of duty. Well, all of our officers, and in fact, any officer in South Dakota would have already been cleared and done a background check on it. So I met with Stanton, and we came up with some verbiage in here that we thought would fit. It says, South Dakota certified law enforcement officers would be exempt to this section of the security policy. So that was all I really had for you. If you had any questions for me.
I have one quick question. You'd mentioned that the different activities that you would be interested in the city contracting for.
Yep.
What of those that you just discussed have we not contracted for in the past?
I'm not sure I
You
understand.
did the school dances. You were talking about all the different things that you were hoping that we would street dances, all that kind of
Yep.
stuff. What of those things that you just said have we not contracted with you in the past for?
Very few of them. In the past, we were doing those off-duty in uniform, and we're no longer doing those off-duty in uniform. So as they come before us now, I'm left with a dilemma. Do I let them go and do it in just a T-shirt and no security or nothing written on their shirt, or do they find somebody else to do it for them, or do we contract through the city if it's approved? So as far as any in the past that we've done, I'm not sure exactly the question you're asking, Bruce, but I don't think there's been any.
I think all this does with this change ordinance, basically what you're trying to do is just say, if somebody decides to contract through somebody else, they have to be a background check and everything else. This is just stating that certified law enforcement officer.
This is exempting the
Yeah.
officers from
Yep.
that statute.
Yep.
It already exempts an employer acting as a guard for an employee. Like, we have a couple of our officers that actually work for the event center, and they're contracted and paid through the event center, so they don't have to have the security guard approval that doesn't meet the policy or the ordinance revision. So that's kind of where we're at, exempting the certified officers.
Lee, does this pertain to only individuals if they're gonna be carrying a weapon?
No, any security type duty. If you have security on your shirt, I would say to your security officer, security guard.
So, when you had the concerts, Randy, and I know you worked out there, and it said event security, that wouldn't be available to be done anymore, because all those people just had.
It would, but through the channels.
Yeah, technically,
that's
by
what
the
I'm
way the
saying. The way
ordinance
you
is
did it
written,
would
that
not
probably
be
would have
enabled.
been
Yep.
not appropriate.
You'd have to do the background check and everything else like that, so.
Right.
What that would do is eliminate somebody from coming to town and running security service for,
Without having some type of
Yep.
background check.
Yep.
Yeah. Yep.
kinda takes the guy with the cut off sleeves away from.
There you go. Well,
Well,
thanks,
that's
Lee.
that's already been the scenario, that this just makes it now, though, if they choose to hire somebody that, from the police force, I imagine this would be law enforcement, it could be sheriff's office, anything this would exempt them.
Correct.
because
Yeah, we
they're-
left it open, South Dakota, in
Yeah.
case we had a big event and we wanted to bring in some officers from out of town.
But otherwise, that other stuff is already restricted. This is only just allowing it so they don't have to go through all the background just
Right.
for,
Yeah.
Okay, well, thanks, Lee,
Thanks.
very much. Appreciate it. And we'll have this on the next council meeting. Number 9, authorization for the mayor to sign an agreement with Ingolstadt Electric for interior lighting at the event center. As you remember, I'm sure you do, we had Tom Chambers and a gentleman from the Missouri River Electric in here and was explaining about cost savings at the event center. And what's interesting is that if you take a look what we're planning on doing right now, this is a contract with Ingolstadt Electric. On the left side is what we currently have in the event center for lights and what the cost is per kilowatt hour and how many hours they're running and what the total cost is. On the right-hand side is if we put in new LED lights in that whole facility. And you can see the cost on there went from $10,631 to $2,225 for the annual energy cost. I did have a chance to go talk to Tom Chambers on this, and Tom told me, because I said, well, are these straight up numbers? And he said, absolutely. The .063 is what we charge per kilowatt hour. And what's happening is that these lights are on almost constantly throughout the day in the event center. So what we're looking at is a project cost to replace all the lights and fixtures out at the event center of $23,000. There is a rebate of $7,446 that would come back to the city. Ingolstadt Electric offered us the opportunity that they would hold back the dollars and they would do the rebate themselves between them and the municipal utilities. So what will happen is the actual expense for the city of Watertown would be $15,554 to install all the lights, all the fixtures inside the event center. Doing that, it actually saves us a year $8,406.16. It's an incredible number, you guys, when you're looking at it. It's $701 a month. What that would do, it would give us a payback of 1.85 years to pay back the $15,446. I would recommend that we approve this. So what I'll do is I will look for a motion and a second for discussion.
So moved.
Motion by Randy, second by Russ. Is there any questions you have for me?
What part of the budget, did we put this in the budget anyplace?
We have
We've talked about
75.
it.
Yeah. We have dollars put in the budget for the event center under, like Shelley says, equipment maintenance.
Yeah, I remember when they presented that, it's kind of a no-brainer, quite honestly, I guess.
It
With
is a
with the
no-brainer.
rebate, it pretty much makes it,
Well, when you look at return on investment being less than 2 years, I mean, it just, when are we gonna put it this way, when are we gonna look at the next city-owned building?
And you know, another thing, just so you all understand, there, on every bulb that's in that, there is a 5-year guarantee on the bulb. So if it goes out before 5 years, they'll replace it for free.
yeah, and then obviously gonna be less issues with time maintenance, changing out bulbs and things like that too, so.
Right, and the expectations, these bulbs will last anywhere from 5 to probably up to 7 years, is what they kind of estimate.
Well, this isn't all just the cost of the bulbs either, because some of this is retrofitting things, so when it comes time later on to replace bulbs, there isn't gonna cost all of this, plus likelihood they're gonna be less expensive anyway. That's the nature of that.
Yeah, I think this is slam dunk. And just for your information, I do believe we have them looking at the outside lights also. It's a different dollar amount. We don't pay quite as much as the .063 in the evening as we do in the daytime hours. So it's a little cheaper, not quite as fast to pay back, but I do think we should look at that also and see what our cost savings are.
Mayor, where does the rebate come from? Does that come from the utilities, it come from the bulb manufacturer, the government? Who does that actually come back to?
From the Missouri River Authority, the electric company, Missouri River. And that'll go directly to Ingolstadt's. If we want it, unless you guys want it to come to us,
Well, they're
either
just
way.
netting it out,
Yeah,
all they're
that's
doing,
all they're
right?
doing.
Yeah. No, I think you find the way it's set up. I think it's a great thing. I don't know
And
to what
it-
extent, like Randy said, what extent do we now start looking at other buildings and where our cost savings are within the facility? We got a whole new building we're gonna be
Well,
building here pretty soon, so we
Exactly.
gotta make sure that we're looking at that and if there's some things there, so.
Those rebates are available to other businesses and stuff too. I know we used it at our place, and so that's,
Well, when you start looking at $700 a month, that's a big deal.
They changed out, the guy from Missouri River was telling they changed out a business they just had the incandescent type bulbs. They changed them out and they ended up having to pay $200 out of their pocket after the rebates, and it was gonna save them several $1,000s a year in electricity. So it's pretty much a no-brainer if you, any business can qualify for these rebates. So I would encourage anybody to get a hold of the utilities, Todd Chambers over there, and he'll get you set up. They'll actually come out and do an energy audit for you and help you with some of this information.
Any other questions? Hopefully I can answer them for you. If not, I will look for council action. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Number 10, authorization for the mayor to sign a letter of support for Connington County Board of Commissioners grant application. At this time, I'll look for a motion and a second so we can have a little discussion on this. Motion by Beth, second by Al. This here is a interesting little deal. I don't know, Stanton, are you familiar with it? Others, if you want to, you're certainly welcome to.
Sure, and
Yes.
I think some on the council may remember, I think it's probably 4 or 5 years ago, you did something similar. The county makes an application through FEMA for grant monies that become available over a 5-year period. This letter doesn't commit the city to any grant monies. It doesn't obligate the city financially. But if the city doesn't show support when the county submits its application, down the road, if FEMA grant money does become available during this 5-year period, if Watertown doesn't show support, we wouldn't be eligible to apply for grant opportunities that come up. So you're not committing the city to any dollars, you're not committing to any projects, you're just showing a letter of support. So in the event during this next year 5-year period, the grant opportunity becomes available that you are interested in, you'll be able to apply.
Perfect. So I will, did I have a motion, a second on that? I do. Is there any other questions we have for Stanton? Hearing none, I'll look for council action. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Number 11, consideration of city funding of development improvements in proposed East Park Avenue. And if we can put that up on the screen also, then. This, if you recall, if you go on Highway 212, and this is going across from Culvers and over in that area, this is on the east side there. Sarah will put, there you go. In the green there, what we're looking at is an opportunity that is coming forward to the city. Some things are happening quite fast. And if you take a look at over to the left, Sarah, you could show them 26th Street. We have some work yet to do on that. We did have a discussion with the DOT, and there was 4 of them there the other day, and Sarah, and gosh, I think we had Austin Engineering there and myself. That's a project that we're working on, and it got a little deeper in thought, so that's going to take a little while longer. But what I would like to propose to the council is that if you follow that green all the way to the east, and I've talked to the landowners of that, they are asking us, and I'm asking you, if the council has any thought of looking at that. Now, Sarah, you were going to get some new numbers for me. Did you get anything on that?
I did. I thought the estimate was a little bit low. Mine came out a little bit higher. I have 452,000. Mine includes more sanitary sewer on the whole length, and some storm sewer, which was not included, and also water quality facilities.
How about roads? Thicker?
The road was pretty close, actually, so.
Okay. Because I know there was a concern. You said possibly 3. I think we need at least.
I think he used 4 in his
Okay.
estimate, so.
So 4 to 5. So what we're looking at, guys, is, and gals, I'm sorry, is the the opportunity of the city of Watertown is kind of like we just talked about the assessment project on the last one. If we were to actually, in a 2-year project, go ahead and put that road in on the green, we would leave that as a gravel road for a year so it can settle in there. And then in the second year, go ahead and pave that. What I would be looking at is the city to fund that. As they sell off a lot, it would be paid for with a sunset of not more than 5 years. So if you're looking at year 2020 and they haven't sold any lots, they are required by our actions to pay this property off or to pay that road off. And that's kind of where we're at. So I would like to get a motion and a second on this so that we can really talk about it in detail.
So moved.
Motion by Randy, second by Beth. So now you kind of got an idea of what we'd like to do, or what I'm hoping that we can do as a city. You take a look at the further over in the blue, there you start running into the Moore's property. And Kathleen, I've been in contact with Kathleen, and she's coming in next week, her and her sister, and we're going to be discussing that. Austin Engineering will be coming in also to see if we can tie into 8th Avenue where Endress came, right there, where Endress stopped. We need to have a better way to bring that 8th Avenue over to that from where we are right now. Whether the Coho property moves up from 26th Street and over, something needs to be done there. And I think that this can really be worked out very well and very easy. They're not asking us to do anything at this time, but I'm afraid if they see us do something like this, they're probably going to ask us to put that road in also so it can be completed.
Is that road gonna affect what may or may not be done on this part in the green then? Or are you saying that needs to be kind of coordinated together, or one doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the other?
Right, one has nothing to do with the other, but I do think that the Morrises need to come to the table, and I know they're willing to do that so we can get this figured out. What is really needed over here, and I know Sarah and I have had this discussion, they need an in and an out of this road. So if you have one in, which is over there on Willow Creek Drive all the way to the east, we need an out. And at this particular time, if we're working extremely hard trying to get 26 done, we aren't going to have an out yet. And that's really needed for fire services and things such as that, you know, emergency medical. But I know for a fact that there's some stuff going to happen if we can help this along. This is a high needed area for Watertown.
You talked about the financing of it or whatever and having it paid off in 5 years or when a lot sells. This would be different than the assessed on the taxes? So would there be any interest accrue on it while we're waiting, or what kind of terms do you have on that?
I don't think I've talked about any interest, but I would assume there's got to be interest. I mean, nobody gives people dollars for nothing, so there would be an interest charge there, plus then, of course, the sunset on it.
Merit, and I know it's got merit, but the question I've got is, whether it be this project or any project, is what you alluded to, is what do we do when the next person says, will you guys put the road in? How do we, there has to be a basis for that decision-making, that why do you do one and not the other? And that's a concern. Unless we have truly a strategy or a guideline or something that says that, I'm not sure how you say no to somebody else.
Well, I think you're right, Mike. I think that we need to, as a city, to increase development in certain areas of town. I think we should really focus on, this is where we want development to occur, and I think the city should really be kind of responsible for getting that out there, because these folks aren't going to do much of a project. I mean, whether it's here or north of there, it's very expensive to put in roads. But if we have that assurance that we're going to get paid back, I personally don't see the downside. I just think the city needs to focus on where we want growth to occur and where do we want the housing to go and development such as this.
Well, I think maybe, Mike, that would be a criteria for somebody in the future that wanted to develop in a similar manner, that they would have that sunset clause apply to them as well. You know, maybe that's the way you lay it out. I don't know.
The other consideration I'll have you guys just is the budgeting process. None of this is budgeted in 2015. We haven't done anything with 2016, and that'll be coming up. But I think to Mike's point, there needs to be some sort of planning, especially now that we've done this bonding and we've considerably increased our debt payments that we do, and we still have current roads that we need to try to budget for, is how do you come up with either an application process to the developer, you know, how fast can we get this done? How do we budget for that? How do you anticipate that? And especially direction for me as well, who is trying to make everything work and make sure that we have budget and funds available when you guys need them to be. So another thing to consider when you're looking at kind of doing something that we really haven't done in the past, because you're really kind of giving people up to a 5-year loan on
What
funding.
I'd like to see us do on this, I know this is something that's just kind of throw it on the table for you, and I know I have a motion and a second on the floor for that, but I really do think that we should have further discussion on this. I think that it's an idea that we're batting around. I know I've got the landowners that are going to be coming forward asking us if we can do this. I would like to, at some point in time, show you some of the facilities that are ready to move in there, and I think it would help you out a lot. So if somebody wants to amend the motion to have another discussion, yeah, you're sure welcome to do that.
Well,
Withdraw it, they can do that too.
what would be the cost in this year? Because you're talking about not doing you had an estimate for the whole thing, I presume, but
See, personally, I
half of
don't
that,
think-
or what's it gonna take? And what are we gonna look at? We'd have to get into this year, because next year we can budget for.
Yeah, the thing is, Bill, I don't think that we need to put all this in here. What I'd like to see is when they come through here with a scraper, that they can scrape that out and show us where that road's gonna be and what it would look like. I don't think we need to go into a whole process this year to get that road put in. But I would like to see the dirt work done at least.
But that, that'll have to be done to some spec, or otherwise it wouldn't be appropriate, so, there's gonna be, somebody's gonna have to pay some money to get that to at least drivable, I would think.
Yeah, and I think Coho is very willing to have the engineering costs. They've already had Austin Engineering do this work here. I believe they would be very willing to do about anything you want on it.
Sarah, are you thinking that we'd put in the first year as phase one, because you said we'd let it settle is the word I think I heard. Would there be any underground infrastructure that we put into this?
Absolutely.
That's what I'm
You
thinking.
put the underground
Then you're gonna
in
gravel over
the
it
first
and-
year, because that's what settles. It's the pits, the trench for the sanitary sewer specifically, and storm sewer. The original preliminary plan that was approved had very little storm sewer on this street, and we might want to take a look at that. We've got 2 inlets for 1,500 feet of street, and maybe that's okay, but I didn't go into, I wasn't involved with this when it was originally approved as a preliminary plan, but it seems kind of sparse.
Besides the sewer and storm sewer, I mean, looking at that, I haven't any idea. I mean, some of that road might need to be built up 5 feet. I don't know. And I don't know, do we know, in your estimates, did you have work on the elevation
I think there
part
is
of it?
some grading, because some of this is in the floodplain, and there's a little bit of grading. It's not just going to be at grade. For the most part, the lots between the road and Highway 212 drain toward the highway, and the north side of the roads drain to the north. It kind of splits that way.
So kind of right in the crown there.
Yeah, so the road is kind of the high spot.
Just so, I mean, I'm not opposed, I just want to know, per se, I just want to know more what potentially we're getting into initially here, so we talk about it, or how we're going to fund it.
Well, and it's about a little less than half of the cost would be the first year for all the pipes and manholes.
No curb or
and
gutter or anything like that
Curb
would
and
go
gutter
in
would
this
go in
year.
the second year.
Do you get an estimate, kind of where we'd split that? I mean, how?
Well, in your packet, Austin did give an estimate. I can bring that up on the screen. I didn't break mine down into phases. My total number is a little higher, but they had 166,000 the first year and 210,000 the second year, for a total of 376,000. And my estimate was 450,000, so a little bit higher than theirs. So maybe 175,000 the first year.
Yeah, most of what you had difference though was in the
It-
first part, because
right,
it was
that's
sewer
true.
and storm sewer.
Another question, when you look at your map, is that completing that off to the east of Willow Creek Drive? Or is,
No, it's not.
That's
It
just-
stops
No,
right there at
no.
Willow Creek.
okay. I mean, you look at the map, it looks both ways, so. But there could be that potential to go the other direction also.
Absolutely. So I'm just thinking, what's everybody's thoughts? What's your thought process on this?
I will amend my motion to table this at this time until further, till we,
Withdraw.
just withdraw my motion, okay?
And I second? Second.
I would like to put this on our work session next time, so that we have more discussion as a council level. And that's probably where I should have had it in the first place for you guys. I apologize for that. It would have given everybody more time to talk about it. That'd be my fault. Everybody okay with that? All right, so we will move on. Number 12, consideration of the bids for seal coat, asphalt, concrete, and milling and crack sealing. I will look for a motion and a second on this for discussion.
So move.
So moved by Beth, second by Bill. Sarah, you want to handle that for us?
Sure. On March 6th, we opened the bids for the street maintenance work, including crack sealing, seal coating, and mill and overlay. So there are 3 schedules, and we had 3 groups of bids. We received only 1 bid for the mill and overlay, and that was from McLaughlin and Schultz. And their bid was 90 cents a square yard for milling, 24 cents a square yard for tack coat and flush seal, $74.90 a ton for roadway overlay, $82.40 a ton for parking lot overlay, $82.40 a ton for the landfill second half of the compost pad. We did the first half last year. Adjusting sewer manhole lids, $450 a piece. Adjusting water valve boxes, $450 a piece. And adjusting gas valve boxes, $175 a piece. And since there were no other bidders and this bid was reasonable, we're going to recommend approval of it. For the crack sealing, we did receive 2 bids. The low bid was from Highway Improvement Incorporated, $1.50 per pound. And we're estimating 34,000 pounds. We could go a little higher than that within our budget of $80,000 if we wanted to. But we're recommending awarding the bid to Highway Improvement. And then the seal coat schedule, we had 3 bids, and 2 of them were very close. The Road Guy Construction, who has done seal coating for the city in the past, and McLaughlin and Schultz, which also has done seal coating for the city in the past. And I had to get down to the nitty-gritty because the way that we bid this project out, we have a supply of chips left over from the previous year, which we sweep up and save, and those can be reused. And that goes into the calculation of who the low bidder is. If you look at the bids between Road Guy and McLaughlin and Schultz, the city-supplied chips from Road Guy is less expensive than from McLaughlin, but McLaughlin's cheaper on the contractor-supplied chips. So you have to know exactly how many chips you're going to use. So I did a little table to show that, and it actually comes out that the Road Guy is just ever so slightly less, $63 out of $270,000. So it's very, very close, but Road Guy's a little cheaper. So we're going to recommend going with Road Guy for the seal coat. If you have any questions about how I figured that out, go ahead and ask. We surveyed the pile. That was a good question, Bruce.
I was thinking too, if we had.
Took us a long
folks just,
time.
You know, sweep all those chips out of their yards from what Rob put in, they'd all be happy. We'd have all kinds of.
All three of those bids are really close.
Yeah.
Have we had the road guy? You said
Yes, we
had
have.
that?
Mhm. There was one slight irregularity in the bidding process, which I am recommending that we waive, and the irregularity was that we issued an addendum which described the rate of application of the oil on the seal coat. So the addendum referred only to the seal coat Schedule A, but it was on the bid form, and this is one bid, and you bid on whatever part you're wanting to do work on. And neither of the crack sealing contractors acknowledged the addendum. And we say right on our letter that if you fail to acknowledge the addendum that's issued, that it may cause the city to not award you a bid. But since they both didn't acknowledge it and it didn't affect the crack sealing bids, I'm recommending that we waive that irregularity. So my recommendation is award the crack sealing to Highway Improvement, award the mill and overlay to McLaughlin, and award the seal coat to the road guy.
Any more questions that you have for Sarah? Hearing none, I will look for council action. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Sarah. Consideration or request for the Mighty Thomas Carnival to use the city lot at the corner of Kemp Avenue and 3rd Street from May 19th through the 25th. This is the corner right over here by County Fair that they want to use the city lot for the carnival. And I will look for a motion and a second for discussion.
So moved.
Motion by Randy, second by Al. Is there any questions that you have on this?
In the past, did those issues get resolved? There were some things with senior citizens or something as far as getting in and out there while they were there. Did that get handled all right last time?
Yeah, in fact, they didn't like, taking up that whole street, so we did keep that open for them to go through last year, and they were very appreciative.
Didn't have
of
any
that.
problem with it last time?
No.
Mayor, is there any do we get any compensation on that, or is it just us being nice?
It's just you guys being nice. It's for the kids.
This one's probably directed more at Lee. Do we do any background checks on carnival workers or? Nope. Okay.
But I will tell you, they're out there walking around looking at, watching these guys and gals, so. Yeah, we'll keep Bruce off the Ferris wheel. Yeah. Okay. Any questions on this then? Any more questions? Hearing none, I will look for council action. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Lee, if you could kind of come up and I'd like to ask you a couple questions. This is old business that I don't know if it's old or new. We never really approached it on the council level, but we had an instance in Watertown last week where there was 9 establishments that your folks went through to try to buy beer,
Correct.
and 6 of those places failed,
6 of 9 places that they did a compliance check failed, yes. Yep.
right? What's going on? What are you thinking?
Well, tried to analyze that as best we could because normally we've had a couple fail in the past at different times. The last check we did earlier this year, we had none of them fail. So we tried to look at the demographics of the people that were selling. They ranged in age from 22 to 40-something were the people working there. Tried to figure out if it was the time of the day of the week. It was a Tuesday evening, not what I would typically call a heavy, busy night. You hear some of the different excuses. It was a busy time, or the person didn't look old enough, or the ID was too hard to figure out. But I think I've expressed it to some of you. But the ID we used, it was the actual person's ID, and right above his picture, it said not 21. So you didn't have to do any math. and the kid looked probably in that 20 range, 18, 19, 20. He may have looked 21 to some, but they're told to check if they look at least 35 or younger, to check, at least ask for an ID, unless you know them.
What I was wondering, Lee, if there's something that we can do, especially with the ones that fail like that, can we have, maybe we need to put something out there, guys, when they fail, that they have to go and have a little class with you guys for an hour and just kind of show how to read a license and ask the questions.
I know
What do you
the
think? Is there
the
something out
state
there?
does a number of things. Kelly Rumser from Watertown Healthy Youth, she's done a few things over the years to help make it harder for kids to get to alcohol. They concentrate on trying to keep people from buying from them, whether it be a relative or friend or a brother or sister or whatever. They work on educating realtors, or real liquor stores, realtors.
Yeah, we know. There are,
Resale.
we're not going there.
Yeah. So what they try to do, and what we do every time we do a compliancy check, is every business receives a letter. The letter might say, you know, compliance check was done, you passed, good job, we appreciate that. You're supporting the kids of Watertown by making alcohol less easily for them to access. If you need anything, here's some things you can do. You can call us to get brochures, handouts, flyers, things to put on the counter to help them figure out a date of birth. And there's also some information about when some classes would be. The South Dakota Retailers Association does a class, I think it's a couple times a year, and I know they do it in this area. The businesses that don't pass get a letter as well, and it says a compliance check was done. We're sorry to see that you didn't pass it. If there's anything we can do to help you, here's some steps you can do. And it also says, as far as contact us for more information, try to get some information out to them to educate them so that they can get their servers into this class. There's a class called TAM, and I'm not exactly sure what it stands for. It's something to do, I think, with alcohol management. Maybe that's the AM part of it, but it educates them on things to look for as far as age and as far as how to identify an ID. But when we've done these compliance checks, we don't try to trick them. We're not in there with a fake ID or a picture that's blurry or letters coming off of it or anything like that. It's straightforward. So if the city council had a flavor for it, we could certainly draft a letter that the mayor could sign or all the council members could sign.
Well, as you know, and I know this isn't your issue and it's not the mayor's issue, but when I read that, I was absolutely flabbergasted when I saw that. I was so disappointed because traditionally we don't have very many. So, you know, the first thing to me is something seems like a red flag somewhere. But I think, you know, I think there has to be a greater consequence for not adhering to the rules. I mean, so if I own a bar and I have somebody that's sold and it's under, they get fined, correctly, the person?
The way it works is the person that did the selling is issued a citation for selling to a minor. Then the business itself, the business owner, is civilly liable through the State Department of Revenue. The first offense, and this is in a 2-year period, the first offense can be a $1,000 civil penalty fine. The second one is $2,000, and if there's a third one within 2 years, they have a license suspension, and then a fourth one is a revocation. So it gets more progressively severe. If their servers have gone through this TAM program, it does cut that fine in half. So the $1,000 becomes $500, and the $2,000 becomes $1,000. So there's some incentive for those businesses to also send their servers to this class.
As you guys know, we put it in where if a place fails, they have to come in front of the council, you know, individually.
No.
On the agenda, not as have to sit there.
Well, that's one thing I'd like to see is changed is,
Well,
yes, it's not automatic like most of them are.
Right.
But we don't require them to come and,
No, but it's on the agenda,
Yeah.
and it's a public hearing, and we can talk about it. They're not required to be here, but I think we should make them go through some type of a class before that license is literally granted without batting an eye.
Well, here's where I struggle a little bit. All right, so the person, you know, I understand that as an owner of a business, you can't have absolute say over what the people do. You can do your best and you can try, but bottom line is sometimes they're just not going to do it as maybe they're supposed to. But so the person that does it, they get this fine, and then we send the business a letter. That's the first level of accountability that we have, is we send them a letter and saying, gee, we got some services. I think they need to hear it directly. I think there should be a face-to-face communication that takes place and not just a letter that we don't see how they're responding to that. I don't know. I think we have to take a stronger position on this than simply sending a letter. I don't know what that answer is to it, but I think the the stronger our position, the more likely that they're gonna be to have a stronger position within their business.
And we
So-
do make personal contact with all of the business owners the following day. Advise them last night, this happened, so-and-so employee was issued a citation. So we do make that follow-up contact. It's not face-to-face, it's over the telephone usually, but sometimes they'll come in and have some questions. So we do make some follow-up like you're talking, Mike.
So,
Do you make a call for the ones that comply also?
I don't believe we do. I think it's just a letter at that point, Randy.
so if I sat down with if I'm in your shoes and I sit down with the person that sold, and I sit down with the business owner and I ask them what happened, what do they tell you?
Generally, that, we've trained them, we tell them what to look for. You can't be there all the time. You can't be over their shoulder watching them. We've got video cameras set up. We try to do spot checks. We try to do things to keep them honest, keep them checking. And they always have an excuse. It was busy, or they looked like they were old enough, or, they just have different excuses like that, Mike, I guess is what we hear.
Is it too much of a time lapse? Mayor was talking about how if they fail, it's not an automatic, kind of a part of the consent agenda that they just renew their license. They actually have to come there, or they have to do it.
They don't have to appear, but
Well,
it is
okay,
on the
that's-
agenda as a
Okay,
public hearing.
okay, that's what I'm trying to get at, is maybe they need to appear on that. If it's on the agenda and we're looking at it saying, okay, you guys had some compliance issues, instead of them just coming and hoping that we're gonna be forgiving, maybe we need to have them
If I got a question for one of them that, what have you did to change your process? To make
exactly.
sure that we're in the right process? There's nobody in the audience to ask that question to.
Right, and that's what I'm getting
And I
at,
think
is-
last year I had a question for one of them, and of course, there wasn't anybody here, so.
What time of the year does that usually come, Shelley, do you know?
The malt beverage is in June, and the wine and liquor is in December.
Okay. And I know in the past, Wade or somebody from City Hall has reached out to the police department, asked us, and we've given that information.
Yep,
to them.
we have to, because we have to do a public notice, and so Wade will always do that with enough time and say and the state statute actually says they have to be convicted of that, so the state has to go through the process and actually convict them. And at this point, with those malt beverage ones, it may or may not happen before we renew in June. It might take a whole another year for that to kind of come through. So there sometimes is a time lag, depending on when they actually have that conviction, and if it's in the time frame of our renewal period.
The problem of it is, you're saying that if they contest it, then it goes through the process in which they'd be then convicted or not, correct? And that can take,
Right, well, and to me, they
Well-
failed, but the state has not come down and said, you are guilty, convicted, here's your fine. And state statute says that they don't have to go through the process, the public hearing process, unless they've been convicted. That process is over. And I know a couple years ago, it bled over, and so they actually didn't have a public hearing. It was like a month after the violation happened, and then a year later, then they had to go on the public hearing because they had a violation in that year period, conviction. So,
Lee,
so we don't issue the citation that they actually have to pay? We don't collect it, we don't do anything, we just issue the citation, and then the state takes over the process?
Yeah, I think she's
And
talking
it can-
about that civil penalty that they do after the conviction, after the person pleads guilty or is found guilty.
But that could be a year or more down the road, is that what I'm hearing?
I don't know how slow the state is coming around.
it can
but
take a
court
few
system,
months. It all depends on
couple
how
months.
quick they go, because it's actually the license holder that you're renewing, not the person who actually sold.
Right.
So-
Lee, I heard you say up to $1,000. Does anybody know?
Well, I
What
maybe
or-
misspoke to Bill. The fine is $1,000. That's what the statute says, is a $1,000
So
civil
that's not
penalty.
negotiable or anything?
It's only
there, is-
negotiable if their server has gone through the TAM program, which then it makes it a $500 fine for the first offense.
Do they go through the TAM afterwards or before?
Hopefully they go both.
Because if they go through it before
Yeah.
and then sell, that seems
Yeah.
a little
Yeah.
contradictive, doesn't it? That-
That's kind of their incentive, to try and get them to send all of their servers rather than just a couple, and then they kind of watch the rest. They want them to send everybody that actually serves and sells.
Lee, out of the 6 where that just happened, were there any repeaters from?
One of them was a repeat within the last 2 years.
Yeah, okay.
I don't know, did you guys hear, was there any kind of a internet glitch? I would've thought they would all been on Twitter or Facebook that night, you know, telling each other that something's
No.
going down.
That does happen.
Okay, well, I just wanted to touch base on this. I
Yeah,
think,
no, I appreciate you
it's a big
acknowledging that it's a
problem in
problem. We
water,
need
you know.
to,
For that to happen, that's
Yeah.
that's a major problem, and we need to be aware of that.
I'm sure you're gonna probably step up a few more compliance checks.
there may be some coming up in April or May.
Yeah. Okay, sounds good.
All
Thanks
right.
for the heads up.
Thank you.
Another thing I wanted to mention was our parade that we just had in town, the St. Patrick's Parade. And I just wanted to throw out some kudos to, and I'm sure I'm going to miss somebody, but Sarah and Kelly and Tim and Jana from the finance office and engineering office and building services. I think, Rob, you helped out there a little bit. And the airport brought out a trailer for us, and those folks put a lot of time into that float, and I thought it looked great, and I just wanted to say thank you to them. I don't know if you all seen it or not, but it was a good time. So any other new business or old business you guys need to bring up? Hearing none, is there any liaison reports that we need to talk about? Hearing none, I do know that there is a need to go into executive session. It won't take very long. I do expect there will be some action out of this. So it should be just shortly. So I would look for a motion, a second, to go into executive session. Motion by Mike, second by Bruce. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? We are currently in executive session.